It seems you were right about what you saw in Miss Drury's dressing room last evening. The medical examiner has confirmed that she was strangled and then hanged after she was dead.
Oh dear.
I'm hoping that Mr. Watersford can shed some light on that empty envelope we found. Ah, here he is now.
Good morning, Inspector.
Crimmins, sir. And this is Mrs. Jessica Fletcher.
How may I help you?
I need to ask you a few questions about Jane Drury, an actress well known in the West End. Did you know her?
Just in passing. Why do you ask?
Last night she was found murdered in her dressing room at the Milton Theatre.
She's dead?
Yes, sir. We found an envelope addressed to Miss Drury from you in her dressing room. Did you, in fact, send her a letter?
Yes. I wrote simply to ask her how I might obtain some theatre tickets for a friend.
I see.
If you'll excuse me, I've got a meeting to attend.
Mr. Watersford seemed more deeply affected by the news of Jane's death than one would expect for a casual acquaintance.
Yes, I caught that too.
Emma and I are going back to Covent Garden. Something there frightened Jane, and we need to find out what, or who it was. The best chance we have to figure out what frightened Jane yesterday is to try and see through her eyes. It's worth a try, I suppose. This is right by the chair Jane was in. What do you see? I have a clear view of the last stool at the bar. Perhaps she saw someone she recognized then. Wonder if the bartender would remember who was seated there at the time. Excuse me. I wonder if you remember who was seated at the end of the bar yesterday around lunchtime.
Yeah, I remember who was there, but I didn't get his name. He asked me if he could leave his card. He should be around here somewhere.
I know exactly where the address on that business card is. Looks like that's our next stop. Are you Mr. Giles Badgepie?
At your service.
A friend of mine, Jane Drury, has been murdered.
Oh, hell.
And we have reason to believe that you may have been following her.
Yes, I was observing her on behalf of a client.
And who is that client?
Sorry, I can't say. Client confidentiality. If you'll excuse me, I'll take this out in the hall.
Mr. Badge Pie, we believe that the client who hired you to follow Jane is Tina Watersford. Would she be the wife of Nigel Watersford, member of the House of Commons?
How did you... Oh, forget it. Yes, I was working for her. Please excuse me. I'm a busy man.
I think Inspector Crimmins and I should pay a visit to Mrs. Watersford and find out why she hired Mr. Badge Pie. She lives in a place called Wellinghall. Sounds very upscale.
May I help you? Of course. Who hasn't?
We discovered that she was being followed by a private investigator named Giles Bajpai.
Is that so?
Yes, we paid Mr. Badge Pie a visit and found out that the person who hired him was you, Mrs. Watersford.
Is that true?
Yes, it's true. I suspected that my husband was having an affair, so I hired Giles to find out more.
Was any evidence found to confirm your suspicions?
No,
Do you mind if we have a look round?
not at all.
How do you explain this theater program, Mrs. Watersford? Jane, meet me at 2 p.m.? So you don't know for sure what the meeting was about?
No, but I'm not an idiot, Mrs. Fletcher. Please excuse me. This has all been a bit much for me.
Mr. Watersford certainly didn't let on that he knew Jane that well the first time we spoke with him.
Typical politician. We'll see what he has to say for himself now. Mr. Watersford, may we have a minute?
More questions, Inspector. I told you I barely knew the unfortunate Miss Drury.
If that's true, why did you write your office address and a time across one of the playbills from Jane's performance?
I told you I wanted to buy some tickets for some friends, but the show was sold out for months. When she didn't respond to my letter, I asked her in person. She wrote down my address and agreed to have some tickets delivered then. Unfortunately, the tickets never arrived.
I see. Do you mind if we have a look around?
I've got nothing to hide.
Nigel lied when he said that the earring belonged to his wife. It matches the one Jane was wearing when we found her body.
My guess is he lied about that program note as well. Perhaps we can discover more about Jane's relationship with Mr. Watersford at her dressing room.
I'll call Emma to meet us there. Well, I'm glad to help, but I'm not sure what we're looking for.
Something that reveals Miss Drury's relationship with Mr. Watersford.
Or at least something that can provide a new lead.
What's going on here?
Just having another look around the scene of the crime, Mr. Winslow.
Why were you insisting that Jane sign a contract with such unfavorable terms for her?
Look, I had no choice. The Milton isn't doing very well financially. I had to try and cut expenses.
Did the negotiations ever get heated?
At times, I suppose. Jane and I were used to fighting. We used to be married, after all.
I'll be taking the contract with me.
How long is this dressing room going to be sealed, Inspector? I'd like to be able to tell the theatre's charwoman when she can clean up the room for a new occupant.
The theater employs a regular cleaning lady.
Yes, she comes every night, around 9 p.m.
So Jane must have been killed sometime after 9 p.m., but before we arrived at 11 p.m.
That does narrow it down.
Giles Badgepie admitted that he was following Jane. I wonder if he has an alibi for that time.
Agreed. Let's pay him another visit tomorrow. The office is unlocked, but no one's here. Perhaps Mr. Badgepie stepped out.
With the rain coming down like it is, I'm sure he'll hurry back.
What are you people doing here?
We just had a few questions for you, Mr. Badgepie, such as where you were 2 nights ago between the hours of 9 and 11 p.m.
I was in a pub down on Exeter Street, waiting to meet with a client, but he never showed.
Mr. Badgepie, I noticed your wet footprints matched the ones we found in Jane's dressing room the night she was killed.
So I was in her dressing room that night. I thought I'd find more evidence of her affair with Nigel Watersford, but she was already dead when I got there.
A likely story. I'm placing you under arrest for Jane Drury's murder.
You've got the wrong man, Crimmins. This is bigger than any of us.
My men will take Mr. Badgepie down to the yard for questioning. In the meantime, would you care to accompany me to Welling Hall? Mrs. Watersford will want to know what happened to her private investigator.
I'd be happy to.